Destiny versus free will. It's Kute here, author of The Magic of Surrender, and you are the one. Destiny versus free will. How much control do we really have over our life and shifting our reality and karma and changing our destiny? This is a question I often get, a question I was just sent in recently via an email. You see, destiny is the momentum that your life is currently moving on based on generations of choices and decisions and the life you were born into. There's three things. There's the life you were born into, which does impact your destiny. Parents, grandparents, the economic conditions, but that doesn't have to mean you're stuck there. Secondly, there is your personal power and your personal will, intention, effort, and actions. That's the second component. Many folks are born into poverty, but through their personal efforts and actions are able to climb themselves out of certain conditions and achieve incredible heights of success. There are many folks that were born into great wealth and families of incredible influence, but through their lack of personal will and effort, devolved and ended up homeless or, on the streets with nothing to show for themselves. So you have the life you were born into, your conditions, you have your personal will, power, and effort, which contributes to shifting your experience of life and destiny. And then you have environment. The environment that you grow up in, the objects, the house, the space around you, the environment with which you live in has an imprint in your subconscious mind that can elicit certain feelings and internal resources from within you. Now, destiny. Is our destiny set? Is our destiny pre-programmed and prescribed, something that we are unable to change? Or do we have a choice? See, here's the thing. Many times we think we have free will, but many of us, even though we think we have free will, we really don't have free will. Because the degree to which you are conditioned by past experiences, childhood, pain, trauma, hurt, many of these childhood programs and beliefs that you have taken on and adopted, the degree to which you're conditioned, living inside of the prison of your conditioning and ego structure, is the degree to which you actually are not free. Is the degree to which you end up, often unconsciously, living out the preset patterns of conditioning from childhood. Some of these patterns are passed down through generations, and sometimes you end up living out your parents and generational karma, parents and the generational beliefs and unresolved issues. I mean, if you look at some of the, relationships that you may have experienced or gone through in your teens or your 20s or early years, and you think back to yourself like, what the hell was I thinking? You begin to realize that you weren't thinking. And if you're really free, truly free, would you have chosen that person? Would you have made that certain choice in your life? You begin to see that often we weren't free. We were living inside of a pattern of conditioning, and based on that pattern of conditioning and identity, we were locked into a way of living and seeing the world that in certain ways we couldn't help ourselves. We were slaves to our past. And so in terms of free will, you could say there really is no true free will if you're conditioned and so identified with your ego. Ego is developed in response to certain experiences that happened when you were young. Maybe dad was crazy, mom was an alcoholic, and so what happened is you learn to shut down, disconnect, not feel, contract, control, erect walls around your heart, Separate from part of your feeling capacity, your intuitive capacity. Then we learn all sorts of strategies and mechanisms and ways to get love and validation and approval. We develop a role, we develop a mask, we develop a persona to get love, validation, approval. We become who we think we need to be loved, to fit in, to be normal, to be okay. And now we contort ourselves into a certain shape in order to function and survive. We're not free. We think we're free, but we're not free. And when we live our life from this program, when we live our life from this paradigm, when we live our life from this identity, we're simply slaves. And many of us, we're not even conscious to the fact that we're conditioned, so we are just living out a mental, emotional, psychological slavery, making certain choices, not knowing why we're making those choices, pursuing certain careers and a certain purpose, thinking it's our purpose, thinking that's what we want to do, but it's really our conditioning. Getting into certain relationships, thinking this is our type of person, this is my type, but it's not our type, it's just our patterned conditioning. You can only truly have free will to the degree that you become aware of your conditioning, and the degree to which you free yourself from your conditioning. In order to free yourself from your conditioning, you have to be willing to question who you are, question your belief system, question your identity, question your values, question what you believe and think about yourself. Who am I really? And you have to be willing to not know who you are, because from a place of conditioning, we often become so sure about who we think we are that we become frozen. And so from that sense of over-identification with oneself as ego, as me, do you have free will? The answer is no. You cannot truly shift your destiny. In order to truly shift your karma, your destiny, you have to shift your sense of identity. But the ego, your perceived sense of self, its job is twofold. To protect you from getting hurt again like you were hurt when you were young. It means well, it's well intended, but it's limited. It's a limited adaptive conditioned pattern that we hold on to. And the ego's job is to reinforce its existence. So when you talk about questioning yourself, when you talk about expanding your perception, when you talk about surrendering, letting go of who you thought you were, which is necessary in order to shift your trajectory, this can feel like a death to the ego. So what we tend to do is we resist change. So when we resist change and hold on to who we have been all along, the momentum that we were born into, the momentum of our childhood beliefs and programming and even generational pattern tends to continue, and the more we're stuck in that track, the less power we have to shift, the less power we have to truly be free and change our destiny. But as you let go of who you were, as you let go of those old beliefs, because when we're stuck in old belief systems, we really don't have a choice. When you believe certain things about yourself, I'm not enough, I'm unlovable because dad wasn't around. I'm unlovable because mom wasn't around. I'm not beautiful. I'm not okay as I am. I'm unworthy. When you believe certain things because certain experiences happened in life that you made up an interpretation about what that meant about you. I'm not lovable. I'm not okay. And you live attached and holding on to that belief system, you are not free. And so you have to be willing to question your beliefs. So ask yourself, what do I believe about life? What do I believe about money? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about the world? And then ask yourself, is it serving me? Is it serving me? And then ask yourself, is it true? Many times we are believing things about ourselves and the world that are really a fiction, and we're making the fiction become a fact. We're believing the fiction as though it's a fact. I had a client who felt she was unlovable and unworthy her entire life. And this was her destiny. She would attract men in her life and partners in her life and people in her life that would leave. People in her life that wouldn't choose her. Relationships with men that wouldn't commit and truly value her. And then she would say, see, this just proved that would become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and she would use those experiences to justify and reinforce why she wasn't lovable, because nobody commits to me, because I can't find a relationship, because nobody wants to be with me, because they don't show up, because the list went on. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and often unconsciously we seek out experiences and situations and events in the world to prove ourselves right. Because the more we prove ourselves right, the more the ego actually feels safe, and the more the ego feels reinforced. See, I know who I am. I'm unlovable. And so my client, her mother left when she was age 8. Her mother left the house, left her and her sister with her father. She made that mean, I am not lovable, because if if I was worthy and my mother loved me, then she would have stayed, and the fact that she left means I'm not lovable. This was the meaning that she made up. You see, as human beings, we are meaning-making machines. The challenge is, what we often don't realize in that moment, is our capacity, especially at a very young age, to make meaning about life is very limited. As little 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, we're doing the best that we can to interpret reality from our very limited perception, and the perception and the interpretation that we often make up is incorrect. But we don't know the difference at 7. We don't know the reality at age 9. We just think that this is true. We're seeking to make meaning about experiences that happen at a young age to try to make sense of the world. Mom left. I'm unworthy, I'm not lovable, and that's what it means. It's not accurate, but we don't know the difference. So I asked my client, the fact that your mother left, could this mean something else? Could it have another meaning? At first she said, no, this is what it means. See, the ego fights tooth and nail to preserve its sense of meaning, its beliefs, its identity. The ego doesn't want to change. The ego doesn't want to change. It wants everyone and everything else to change, but it doesn't want to change because that's how it preserves its sense of I am existing. We have to be willing to question our beliefs. You are not your beliefs, you are not your thoughts, you are not your perceptions, you are not the meanings that you make. You're pure, whole, perfect, complete. Beliefs change, ideas change, stories change. So we make up a story about ourselves to try to make meaning about what happened, and the story that we often make up doesn't make sense, but now we take the story, ego takes the story, holds on to the story, and lives our entire life holding so tightly to the story for a sense of safety and security. At least I know I'm not enough, and at least I know what not enough feels like. And sometimes it's safer to hold on to not feeling lovable and enough and having this reinforced than risking opening one's heart and risking being loved and risking letting love in and the potential unknown of that. So we must be willing, if you truly want to transform and shift, you must be willing to question your belief systems. You must be willing to question the stories. So when that thought and belief arises, ask yourself, is this true? Is this fact? Is this fiction? The belief that I have in my mind, the belief that I am so sure about within myself, could it mean something else? Could there be another interpretation? Could there be another meaning in this situation? Likely, the answer is yes. You are not your beliefs. You are not your stories. You are infinite. You are an infinite being. So free will and destiny, at any moment, you hold the lock and you hold the key to set yourself free as you shift your beliefs and stories about yourself. When you do that, and you dare to question who you are, so that you can get in touch with who you really are, not just who you think you are, and live that out. You free yourself and you begin to rewrite your future. You begin to rewrite your destiny. You begin to shift the karmic, energetic momentum of your life. You may not always be able to change the life lessons that you're here to learn, but you can change how you see it. You can change how you see yourself, and you can learn the lessons. And as you learn the lessons, this affects your experience of life, but it also affects life itself. And the more you learn those lessons, the more you free yourself, and the more you free yourself, the more life changes, the freer you become. Folks, I hope you enjoyed today's short video. Make sure you share this with everyone in your life that you love. Go to Kute Blackson, www.kuteblackson.com. Enter your name and your email to receive a free 3-part video training series on how to find your purpose. Love now.